Hey folks, Turbine Guy coming back at you one more time. Now today we have a special guest with the Turbine Guy. It is Mrs. Turbine Guy. Hooray! And we're here for one specific reason, and that's to talk to the people of Orono and the surrounding communities, because we got up in front of the city council a couple of weeks ago and we had some serious issues to disclose to the community and to talk to Mayor Walsh about, and the rest of the council too. People might have thought, hey, what are these people up there acting the way they are for? Why would they be pushing so hard on this stuff going on? Well, we're here to supply answers, aren't we, honey?
Yep, and I would want to add that I said weasel how many times during my 3 or so minutes in front of the council.
Not enough.
Yes, and it's the things that we're going to outline here that happened since Mayor Walsh was elected to the city council in November of 2014.
Now, you have to remember that there is a history of Walsh doing things to us and our family before that. But like my wife just said, we're hoping to scope in on since he was elected for a very specific reason, aren't we?
Yep, and that's why we chose the forum of an Orono City Council meeting, because that's where elected officials are accountable to the taxpayers and the citizens of Orono. And I think you're going to see when we go through all of the fact-based items we have here that it is completely egregious and weasel-like behavior that Mayor Walsh has conducted himself since 2014.
And to add on to that just a little bit, the reason we're doing it here is because they don't talk to us. The city council doesn't respond. City staff responds with just blah, blah. Yeah, maybe we received something. But they really don't respond to the Nygaards who have lived in our house since 1996. And I grew up in Orono Long Lake and graduated Orono High School. So I've been out here all my life. My wife has been here about half her life now. And we can't even get the government in our community to show us any respect.
Even a step further is it's enabling behavior, enabling this to happen. When we've pointed it out and said, this is wrong, how can you be tolerating this as other elected city officials or city administration?
Or the police department,
Yep.
Chief Farniak and them, who absolutely refuse to deal with any of the crimes that have happened to the Nygaards. We have bullet holes in our windows. It's a mere one-page police report where the officer says, there's nothing we can do. So that's our issue, is a complete lack of response by the government to protect the Nygaard family from the nefariousness that's been delivered upon us.
So we are here to go through item by item since Mayor Walsh was elected to the city council in November of 2014, sworn in then in early January of 2015. So that's where this segment takes us from a start to present day.
To present. Now, I want to outline something quickly. I did start my company, Go Green Energy LLC, in Florida in 2008, and I've been building it ever since. And it's a tremendous company installing renewable energy, common sense, and promoting the DIY aspect of renewable energy. And that was 2008. Walsh was elected 2014, like we said. And from there on, you won't believe. Now, normally, I don't use cheat sheets, but we're going to use one today specifically so we have everything ordered and we speak to the actual facts as to what's happened. Now, elected 2014, March 2015, shortly after elected, Dennis Walsh was involved in developing a wind turbine ordinance for the city of Orono that prevented us from installing wind turbines on our property. Even though we had already defeated the city of Orono in their outright wind turbine ban, we had won the right in court to have wind turbines on our property. And in 2015, Walsh, as a city councilman, was directing and pushing the banning, further pseudo-hidden banning of micro wind turbines and other wind turbines in Orono. December 2015. Mayor Walsh actually called out at a council meeting for 100% zoning compliance of the Nygaard property, the house we're at right now, that we've been at since 96. Now, what's the problem with 100% zoning compliance? Well, first of all, it goes strictly against Orono code in that compliance is on a complaint-based system. properties are not to be singled out and zoned in a 100% manner. You simply deal with issues as they arise through complaints. So specifically, Walsh calling for that and calling for a vote for that was targeting of the Nygaards. Then in January 2016, a month later, he called for a vote to target our property, and he lost 2-2. And then when Council Lady Levang basically abstained and said, I'm not going to go along with this targeting nonsense, Walsh called her chicken shit for not jumping on his bandwagon to go after the Nygaards.
So we found out later date, but the actual date it occurred in June of 2016. At this point, Mayor Walsh was a city council member, so an elected official. He filed with the state of Minnesota the Go Green Energy LLC Corporation.
Mirroring my Go Green Energy LLC.
So the only difference is founded in Minnesota versus Florida, and adding the word corporation to the end of it.
While he was on the city council after calling to target our property.
So that, to me, is an ethical violation, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Well, it's the beginning of the violations. And in the Turbine guy's mind, when someone forms a corporation to mirror another person's corporation within the city, they've created their own conflict of interest in regards to that person and business, and should not have anything to do with any votes related to those people. It's a self-imposed conflict of interest.
And in my opinion, Kendall Nygaard, Mrs. Turbine Guy, that is the moment in time when Mayor Walsh, then City Council Member Walsh, should have been recusing himself for anything related to the Nygaards. But did he? Oh, hell no.
No, we're going to find out. Instead of doing that, what he did was he took it upon his back there to drag the Nygaard persecution along and push it all himself. And we're going to go through what I think you're going to be amazed to see that none of you would have had to want to live with for yourself.
And my little prop here, I just have to say, as you're listening to this, as a taxpayer in the state of Minnesota, in Orono, just be having like a taxi cab meter running and how many doleros were going to fund this persecution against our family.
How many city dollars? How many state dollars? How many of everybody else's taxpayer dollars are they using on a personal vendetta?
And let alone the Nygaard's legal bills, which I can unfortunately say are over $500,000.
Over micro wind turbines. Over something that we all in Minnesota have a right to have. And we codified that right in our lawsuit against Orono that Judge Bush ruled everybody in Minnesota has a right to harvest the wind.
Okay, so in the fall of 2016, Mr. Nygaard, my husband here, ran for state senate.
Many of you may know that. I got 7% of the vote out here as a libertarian, and I want to thank you all for your support.
In that same election cycle, then City Council Member Walsh ran against Lily McMillan for the Orono mayorship. So there was a lot of political activity going on, both in our home, because of my husband running for state senator, and Mayor Walsh, then city council member, running against the incumbent mayor, Lily McMillan.
Now, I want to give you a little background on that election. There were several people in the community who were actively trying to keep Walsh from becoming mayor. And they were spending their own money doing it. And one of them happened to be Gabriel Jabor. Now, one of them kind of happened to be me, but I would just talk to people. I never put out any publications or did anything like that. But now, okay, Walsh decided that what Gabriel Jabor was doing, I was involved with, even though I hadn't talked to Gabriel in 15 years, except for one lunch meeting we had to discuss wind turbines.
So, we're now at October 5th of 2016. City Council Member Walsh sues Jay here for a baseless defamation lawsuit, and it took thousands of dollars for Jay to defend himself. Again, taxpayer dollar resources to investigate. And what does City Council member Walsh do? He just withdraws it when he realizes there was absolutely no facts to support it.
Well, not only that, see, Gabriel Jabor was drawn into this with me, and because he was putting out election literature against Walsh, which I had nothing to do with. So how could I be any part of any defamation if I had nothing to do with it? But with the way Walsh's mind works, he's a very suspicious and conspiracy-minded person. He made up in his own brain that Gabriel and I were working together with no evidence, filed that lawsuit against both of us. Not only that, what else did he do?
So then he files a baseless OAH election complaint, which is an Office of Administrative Hearing. Again, taxpayer dollars, here you go. Mr. Walsh decides that Mr. Jabor and Jay Nygaard are going to be drug into this baseless complaint about the way that they were conducting political campaigning.
And his whole thing was, I should have disclosed on Gabriel's literature my name because I was involved. Yet I had nothing to do with any of it, which is why Walsh had to withdraw the complaint as well as the lawsuit, because I had nothing to do with it. Like my wife said, thousands of my dollars down the drain, not an apology, not an explanation, nothing from Walsh except what comes next. In the fall of 2016,
during election season,
he worked with our neighbor, Peter Lanfer, and they developed a quid pro quo, their own conspiracy to get us. And what it was Lanfer was going to sue the city of Orono to force the city of Orono to sue the Nygaards, and Lanfer sued the Nygaards. Well, the outcome of the Lanfer suit with the Nygaards was we bought their house. Okay? That's how bad their lawsuit was. They were forced to sell their house to us, and they're out of here. But what happened, here's the real bad part. What happened the other way was they sued Orono to sue us. Now, in Minnesota or other places, you cannot sue government entities to go after other people, or rich people win. I mean, it's very simple. So Orono went to dismiss the lawsuit against Lanfer, but not until 18 months later, after Orono sued us, used $1 million insurance trust fund money, this your money, to go after us for our clothesline, our micro wind turbines, our flagpoles, just a whole plethora of things.
Wood pile.
Yeah, a firewood pile, a fire pit. I mean, it's just crazy how the 100% zoning compliance and targeting came in. Now, they did that for 18 months before they dismissed the lawsuit, which begs my question, why didn't you just dismiss the lawsuit right away and leave us alone like you should have? Why? Because Walsh was mayor and this was his game. How do we know it was his game? Because specifically after Walsh was mayor, the neighbor sued the city to sue us, and the neighbor got appointed to a new zoning committee by Walsh, a code review committee, which the neighbor wanted to be on to enact codes to control us. So, what city do you know of is going to appoint someone to a committee right after that person sues the city? The city of Orono, with Mayor Dennis Walsh in charge. And one more time, this is all your money they're using on a personal vendetta.
So in January of 2017, I'd had it. And I told my husband, I cannot live in this community anymore.
They made it unlivable. My wife, her whole dream was to live out here, to have a place on the lake. And we were so happy when we moved here with our Chris Craft boat and finally had our retirement dream home. And within, I don't know how many years of Walsh being elected, that's over.
Fast forward to the summer of 2017, there is a business owner at the time that owned the Orono station. It's right off of Old Highway 12 and really sits on the border of Orono and Long Lake, Minnesota. Brad Erickson, and his wife at the time decided that they were going to put up one of Jay's
a hybrid light pole. wind turbine solar with battery bank over the diesel pumps because that light didn't work, so they could light their diesel pumps up at night. Off-grid solution, energy saving. Brad and I made a deal. He paid me $100 my first payment. We got the thing up and running.
So why was this important? Because at the time, there was only a couple of wind turbines still standing in Orono. One on our roof of our home here in Orono. The other one at the...
Two of them, down by the lake.
Oh, yes, and then two by the lake, which is also what the neighbors sued us for, is removing those two wind turbines.
And unfortunately, this was hard on Orono because we were in litigation with them over our wind turbines. As I said, the neighbor sued the city to sue us. So there was a current ongoing litigation about it, and having another micro wind turbine in Orono really could have affected their lawsuit in a negative way. So they had to find a way to get that turbine out of Orono. I had no idea that he had created his own conflict before this even happened by forming the corporation. But upon doing a search with the Secretary of State, what did I find out? In December 30th of 2017, when I did my search, I found GGE LLC Corporation, Walsh's business. And I couldn't believe the nuts that guy had to form a corporation that mirrors mine and then do everything he can to run me out of business in the community.
So what I did as soon as we found out, as I said, honey, there's got to be some kind of, for elected officials, ethics training. I mean, this just smacks of unethical behavior and actions.
Well, illegal behavior, I would say. Completely illegal. I mean, talk about abuse of power.
Due process.
All kinds of things I'm sure we could come up with. But unfortunately, our local law enforcement has a hard time seeing that. And they just kind of have surrounded the wagons to not only protect the mayor, but to protect themselves.
So anyhow, we found out in late 2017. Now, mind you, he was elected to the city council in 2014. He created this conflict when he came up with Go Green Energy LLC Corporation. And that's the minute he should have conflicted out and recused himself for anything regarding us. But he keeps going, folks, and he keeps going. And that's why I said, Weasel Walsh, how many times? There's probably going to be a contest coming up on our YouTube channel, and we'll see how many times I called him.
I lost count. Yeah. So anyways, after he did that and I discovered it on December 30th, I sent letters to all the council, city administration, and the police department demanding an outside investigation into the corruption up at Orono City Hall. I sent it on January 31st, February 11th, May 13th of different years, and I never got a response except letter received. Okay, so we have a city staff and a police department that is 100% covering for the corruption up at City Hall.
And the other elected city council members, they were notified, but that's okay. And again, here's more of your tax dollars.
Using the tax dollars to try to run a competing business out of town so he can take over. Now, we did have Dennis Walsh under deposition at one point, and he is real slippery in depositions like a weasel would be because he doesn't answer anything straight, and he really has a hard time remembering anything, even though he kept saying he had a great memory. He really had a hard time. But he did actually admit that he formed LLC Corporation in order to do green energy projects. Okay? Green energy projects. That's what I do. Interesting, huh? All right, well, as I said, nobody ever responded. Then in March of 2019, with this lawsuit the city went after us with, at the behest of the neighbors, Orono moved to jail, both of us, for contempt of court. And that motion failed. In May of 2019, 2 months later, Orono moved to jail us again for contempt of court. That motion was so ridiculous that the judge just dismissed it outright and said, give me a break.
Now, I don't know about you, But I don't feel like I'm a criminal.
I do at this point. I mean, they put me in jail for having a buried chunk of concrete in my yard. I had no idea green energy was illegal in Orono, yet that's what happened. Now, that's just some of it. The latest saga, when we bought the neighbor's house they were forced to sell to us, I tried to get a permit to replace the driveway. I actually looked, I couldn't find where to get one. I got several other permits that were easy to figure out I needed. And so I went to replace the driveway, and the inspector came out, of course, right when the cement truck shows up, and said, well, you need a permit. I'm like, well, I couldn't find one. I explained it to him. He said, well, you need a general zoning permit. Where does it say that? He said, well, it's just in there. So I said, fine, I'll apply for the permit. You going to stop us? He said, no, I'm not going to stop you for the driveway. Well, after 6-7 weeks of trying to get the city to issue my permit, they refused to issue the permit and criminally charged both of us for failure to obtain a permit to replace a driveway.
Now, granted, this is an investment property. I didn't live there. Jay didn't live there. Nobody lived there. We were going to sell it, and it has subsequently sold to some very nice people.
And not only that, she had nothing to do with it. I did all the work there. Everything was in my name. In fact, she was in Florida while we were pouring the driveway. And if you read the ordinance, the people doing the work are the ones who get to get criminally charged, which really kind of sticks in my craw. Because my buddy Bubba was there and my son was there helping me. Why weren't they criminally charged instead of my wife, disabled wife, who's down in Florida enjoying her retirement?
And our home there.
And our home there. You know, and enjoying not living in the horrendous environment that's been created for us here in Orono.
Yeah, authoritarian. And this is when I really got PO'd about the tax dollar misuse. So not only did I have to fly home
several times,
2 times for
during COVID
for a trial that never happened. It got moved. I get it. There were issues with the court systems because of COVID. But they could have dropped this.
At any point, they could have dropped it. And the crazy thing is, the guy who charged us, who do you think charged us? The police? No. The prosecutor? No. Jeremy Barnhart, Community Development Director of Orono, has the power to criminally charge any of you, just like he did us. And he had the guts to say to me the other day that I don't criminally charge people. Well, I have the document he sent to the prosecutor that says, I want the Nygaards criminally charged because they have been arguing with me for weeks. Nygaards also admitted he never talked to her. So how was my wife arguing, Mrs. Turbine guy, with the guy who admitted he had never even talked to? So
never talked to him in my life, but
that's just crazy. So while this is going on and we bought the property, there had been a boundary line dispute with us and the neighbors where the neighbors just couldn't ever leave anything alone. So we decided we wanted to do a minor adjustment of this property boundary, a foot at the street, a few feet down by the lake, to move the boundary to the top of a crest of a hill where the natural divide is to resolve any future issues. And then Mayor Walsh led the charge. Now remember, this is the guy who created his own conflict years ago, leading the charge to deny our property line adjustment. And this needs to be made perfectly clear. There was absolutely nobody against us doing this. There was nothing in the community that said we shouldn't. Nobody had stood up and said no. Nothing. After they denied our minor boundary line adjustment with no opposition in the community, led by Weasel Walsh, who had created his own tremendous conflict, we were both exonerated at trial in August of 2021. My wife was dismissed for lack of probable cause halfway through because she had nothing to do with it. And that's what the ordinance said. Me, I defended myself pro se without a lawyer, and I was found not guilty at the end. So we've got a whole day of court, of judges, of bailiffs, of prosecutors. How much do you pay for everybody else for something they knew was a failure? Well, something I want to throw in here that's not on our list. I've been criminally prosecuted 4 times by the city of Orono. She's been once. That's 5 times. Never been convicted. That is your money. Yes, it's our money, but it's your money too. Is this what you think the criminal justice system should be used for? Is this what you think your city council should be doing? Is this what you think your police department and prosecutors should be doing? Or should we be leaving the criminal courts for criminals, not green energy pioneers or entrepreneurs? Well, the crazy thing is, after all of that, I'm not guilty, she's dismissed for lack of probable cause, Orono just closed the file on the building permit for the driveway without issuing it, meaning we didn't even need it in the first place. Meaning they knew damn well, and they admitted on the stand that they knew it, that there was nothing to even charge us with. But that is what they do at Orono City Hall when the Nygaards come up. Don't do a thing for them. Don't talk to them, charge them, persecute them. Do what you can to make their life miserable, because that is what Weasel Walsh wants. Would you disagree, honey?
No, I would say that they were happy as heck to hear that I moved to Florida in January of 2017. They were halfway there and driving us out of the community. And again, I'm going to say, and who was the leader of the pack?
Dennis Weasel Walsh. Now, in closing, I want to recap a few things here. First of all, I've got a video you can find, and it's about Walsh. When I was up at the city council, I asked him if he attended ethics training. I actually asked all of them if they attended ethics training. You know, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm smart enough to do my research first. And I did a data request with the League of Cities, and I found out who had attended ethics training. Now, it's not required, it's not mandatory, it's a voluntary thing, but I knew specifically Walsh had not. So I went up and I asked them during this land use property boundary adjustment, hey, who here did their ethics training? And 2 of them raised their hands out of 5, and Walsh kind of looked around and did this too, like a little kid. And I busted him because I knew. And why don't you ask yourself this question? How trustworthy is somebody, especially a public official, who can't even tell the truth about attending ethics training? I mean, come on. You can't even do that. So we want to reiterate how egregious it is that Walsh formed his own Go Green Energy LLC corporation to mirror my specific company while he's living 5 houses away and he's on the Orono City Council. How terrible is it that when I keep contacting the city looking for investigations, I get nothing except wagon circling to protect the corruption, from city administration to the police department to the council. Walsh created this conflict himself. He did it all himself. There's no hidden thing that he missed. This is open and in front and self-inflicted by himself. And how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of hours are now gone over this? And how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if you really add up all the lawyers, city staff time, police involved, court systems, judges, bailiffs, everything else, witnesses brought in, 5 criminal prosecutions of the Nygaards. I do want to throw this in at the end, honey. Only we would have taken that luck and played the Powerball. Because we are 4 times more likely to win the Powerball than get off on 5 criminal prosecutions in Hennepin County.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. But those kind of numbers don't lie.
And at the April 11th, 2022 City Council meeting, when I said, you can't hurt us anymore, it's because we're not going to just sit and take this. This is ridiculous. This is insane. And that's why I said weasel. How many times? So if you can figure out how many times Mrs. Turbine Guy said weasel during my 3+ minutes.
You win the prize.
So people have approached us about the fact that we sound a little bit paranoid. And we use phrases like, he's out to get us, they're out to get us.
Persecution.
Yeah. And I guess if you're standing 1,000 feet away from this, it might look like we're paranoid. But literally, before he was elected, and that will be a whole different video of the personal attacks against my husband and me and our family that have occurred by this man, But when he chose to form that corporation, Go Green Energy LLC Corporation, mirroring my husband, Mr. Walsh, you can't get us anymore. That's why when I was on the stand speaking at the city council meeting on April 11th of 2022, I said, you can't hurt us anymore. We're done living in your shadows.
Or in fear of what the city is going to do to us next.
Because what are you going to do to us next?
Nothing. There's nothing more you can do.
How criminal can we be? This is our criminality?
And you know what? I have a question for all of you. If this had been and this is only part of it during this time frame, if this had happened to you, how would you feel?
The other thing, and that reminded me of when I received the City of Orono Spring newsletter, again, the mayor's messaging. He says, I'm always here for you. More like, I'm always, if you're the Nygaards, coming after you.
Here to get you.
Yeah. And then the other quote is, and this one he always puts in the message from the mayor, my motto is citizens first, and that will never change. And I don't think so.
And how does that comport? Okay, and I'm going to tell you, I want y'all to know, we're not the only ones in Orono who have had issues with Weasel Walsh. I've had people come out of the woodwork who don't want to go public because they are afraid of their local government and the power and the money the local government has to make their lives miserable.
So we could do a whole segment, and probably will, to explain the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust Fund.
And how that was completely abused by this process.
And again, that's everyone in Minnesota that's a taxpayer. No matter if you own land, you have a home, you own a business, you are paying taxes and you are helping fund this, and you will be absolutely blown away how your tax dollars can be turned around and used
against you.
Yeah.
Against you for silly things like going green, or like the Sanchagrins for silly things like putting a dock on a property legal, or like Nancy the dock lady trying to rent a dock space to pay her taxes so she can keep her long time family home. That's what goes on in these communities. That's what the League of Cities is doing to people, and that is something we need to stop, and we need everybody to understand.
So we're not afraid. We're not going to be silent. We're going to be advocates for people that can't put a voice to these kind of situations that are occurring, but we will.
We will. And you know what? We're not going away. This is my community. I grew up on North Arm when I was a little kid. Then we moved to Long Lake. I was at Orono High School my entire career. And then after I graduated...
Orono schools.
Orono schools my entire career. And then I joined the Navy, served my country, honorable discharge. And when I came back after getting my mechanical engineering degree at the University of Minnesota, talk about a hometown boy, huh? We moved back to this community, and I volunteered for the Planning Commission and ran and got onto the City Council. I have been there for this community. And in that time, I delivered Meals on Wheels for 18 years out here. This is my community. This community is a part of me, and I feel that I'm a part of it. And to have outsiders come in and do this to people like me who have sacrificed so much for the community, and have it fall on my wife and have it fall on my family, is just disgraceful to the name Orono.
And that's why I said at that April 11th City Council meeting, when they were not going to let me provide.
They were trying to stop her from making a public comment.
And I sat on the dais and basically put my back to them. And
I'm here.
And I'm like, you know what? Charge me. That would be something. First Amendment rights, speaking out against a weasel who's done this to me and my family, has cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, has made it untenable to live in this community, that I go to Florida to find peace and quiet and happiness.
And you know, when nobody else responds to help deal with the corruption going on up there, you have nowhere else to go but to the public. And where's the public? The public is during public comments. So that's why we went, and that's what we did. And I know some of you may think we were a little out of line, My opinion, we were very controlled given what we've been put through.
I agree. And I don't apologize for it.
I don't either. I'm just sorry, really sorry that we even have to do this in our community. And I'm sorry that the leadership of our community is so blind to their own persecution.
But if you have some other criminal charges you'd like to make, Orono, against my husband and I, it's open season.
Hey,
come on at us.
We beat you 5 times already. Come on and get us. We're here. There you go, folks. Remember part 2, maybe part 3, who knows? Bunch of parts coming. Anyways, Turbine guy.
Where's the weasel sign?
Oh, you want the weasel again?
Oh yeah, we just.
There we go.
Again, contest. How many times did Mrs. Turbine guy call him a weasel at that April 11th city council meeting? And you'll know why after watching this video.
There you have it, folks. Turbine guy signing off.